Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Farah, and today I'm just going to tell you guys what my favorite books for the year were. I read probably close to 48 or so books, which is great. My goal for the year was 40. I beat my record last year, which was 35, I think, 30 or 35. And I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but for me, I just don't have a lot of time to read, so I felt really proud with the amount of books I read. Previously, before that, I was reading maybe like 2 books a year. So definitely made some strides and made reading more of a priority. So let's get started. First, I'm just going to tell you about the 3 nonfiction books that I picked. I'm just separating it to nonfiction and fiction. So I have 3 honorable mention and 3 favorites. So the first 3 honorable mention books for nonfiction that I read were Trainwreck by Sadie Doyle. And this book talked about why we as a culture tend to love and pay attention to and rip apart the demise of female celebrities, specifically young female celebrities such as Britney Spears, Amy Winehouse, people like that. Why do we as a culture want to see them fail, and then when they do fail, we love them again? I don't know. It's so crazy. But this book was really well written. I really enjoyed the author's point of view and all the points she made about the psychology behind all of this. It's something that I've always been aware of, but I've never really read anything that explained it or talked more about it. So I really liked the section that she talked about Britney Spears and how this girl, she was probably 15 or 16 years old when she first started becoming famous, and the industry just completely sexualized her. And it was basically pornography, child pornography, when you think about the Rolling Stone covers she used to do and the videos she used to make, and how her entire career was based on being a sex symbol for older men. And it's crazy. And then when she started to live her life and, the paparazzi got a hold of her and the media just tore her apart and all these things happened, and we just watched this girl crumble and burn. And and then we have Amy Winehouse, who struggled with addiction. And why do we care? Why do we pay attention to their lives so much? Why is it so fascinating? Why can we not look away? So the author just did such a great job and balanced these stories and her perspectives and her insight. I thought the pacing of the book was really great. It kept me engaged. I got right through it. Usually with nonfiction, I can kind of stumble a little bit and put it aside for a while, but I really enjoyed every minute of this book, and I thought she had some amazing points. So honorable mention to Trainwreck. So the next book on my list, honorable mention, goes to Driving While Black. And this was a book that was a book club book for me for my alumni book club. And this book was really eye-opening and very interesting. It talked about how the invention of the car and the accessibility of it when it became more readily available to everyone really changed the lives of so many Black Americans living here in the U.S. Prior to when the automobile became accessible, people would have to rely on public transportation, and that was very dangerous for a lot of people because of the Jim Crow laws and all of the segregation and the racism that people had to deal with and suffer through every single day that they had to go somewhere. To get on a bus and have people staring at you and be forced to sit in the back and be forced to get up and move your seat if a white passenger came on. Just the danger that they faced on a daily basis just using transportation. So when people were able to get these cars and to move around freely within their area and within the United States, it just opened up so many doors for them, and it broke down these walls of segregation within public transportation. That being said, it also talks about how once they did have cars, they would have to be afraid of different things. So they'd have to plan out their routes very carefully because there were only certain places that they could buy gas from, certain hotels that they could stay at. And God forbid you broke down, if you were in a town that was very heavily segregated, it could be very dangerous for you. So there was so many interesting facts within this book, and I really enjoyed it. I read it as a mix of both audio and as an ebook, and I really thought both were very interesting. The narrator did an excellent job. The book also was a little bit memoir, so the author was talking about her memories and her parents' experiences with this, as well as what the history told us. So that was really, really interesting. My only criticism probably would have been that the book felt a tiny bit academic. I felt like there was a lot of facts to go through. Some things flew over my head a little bit, but for the most part, it was very engaging and very interesting, and I really enjoyed that. So the last honorable mention I have to talk about was The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. And this book talks about how you can sort of help yourself get out of debt and become more financially free and independent. And I really liked the style of this book. I like how it was broken down. It kind of gives you all these different steps to follow in order to get rid of your debt and to remain debt-free and really not be confined to your money and to get out of these awful spending habits that we have. And the main premise of the book is to really live underneath your means, which I think is so important. A lot of us, we live beyond our means or within our means, but really if you can find that sweet spot of living just underneath your means so that you're able to be debt-free, you're not having to use credit cards anymore, you're not being burdened down by this feeling that you're always owing money and not sure how you're going to save and how you're going to build your future. I really enjoyed it. A lot of his points resonated really well with me, and I think it's a book that I can refer back to many times, and I've already started to see some positive changes within my life just by following his tips. So the only real criticisms I have is that he does do a little bit of weird fat shaming throughout the book, and not specifically shaming overweight people, but more so using being fat as a very negative metaphor in terms of being in debt, and using the skinny metaphor as being financially free. So I thought that was a little weird. I didn't really like it. And then he does use a lot of biblical references, or he's a very religious person, so that was scattered throughout the book, which doesn't bother me, but it could bother somebody else if you're not a particularly religious person. But overall, really enjoyed it. So now on to my favorite nonfiction books of the year. We have first, number 3 is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. And this was his memoir that he wrote, and I honestly probably wouldn't have picked up this book. I don't tend to read a ton of memoirs. And if I do, it's only for people that I really, really like. But my sister had read it or was reading it, and she thought it was really good, and she recommended it. She recommended the audio to me. So I figured audiobook, I can get through that pretty fast. So the audiobook was really good. I got it from my library, and it's narrated by Matthew McConaughey himself. So the first thing that I realized was he's a really, really good writer. He's very talented. He's very... what am I trying to say? He's really introspective. Like, I got the sense that he really thinks about what he's thinking about, if that makes sense. And he said right away in the book that he's kept a journal for all his life. So he writes his thoughts down, he writes his experiences down. And we kind of go through what his life was like. So we start out when he's a kid, and then we move up through high school. He studies abroad in Australia for a year, which I've done that too. So I really liked reading about that and hearing about his stories. Pretty crazy stories that he has there. And then it talks about how he landed his first job as an actor. It talks about his role in Dazed and Confused. And it talks about how he dealt with his rising fame and what that felt like and what it was like. And when he met his wife and when he had his children. And he just did such a good job. I mean, maybe because I listened to it and I listened to him telling his story, it really elevated the experience for me. But the writing was great. His voice narration was excellent. I mean, he's an actor, so he knows how to do that, but he did a really great job. His relationship with his wife and how he described meeting her, and it was so heartwarming. Like, it was so sweet. Just really, really sweet to read about that. So he's a very interesting guy. He has a very interesting life. If I had to have one criticism, I would say that he's very confident. Like I think he really believes in like the law of attraction. He doesn't come out and say that, but it's almost like he knows what he wants and it happens for him. So many things just kept happening for him. Life just keeps working out for him, kept working out for him. And I know that everybody has struggles. Everybody has things that go wrong. And maybe he just didn't share those pieces as much within the book because it was very like I made this happen, like this happened and this and that. So that was a little bit like, okay, you're perfect, we all know. But it was really interesting, and it was a great read. My next one in line, number 2, was a memoir called Nowhere Girl by Cheryl Diamond. And this book was about this girl who grew up with parents that were basically running from the law her whole childhood. They were involved in intense fraud and money laundering, and they were being hunted down by the government, and she's growing up within this environment. So she has to learn how to use a fake name. She has to learn all these weird survival tricks, and they constantly are moving because once somebody starts picking up on their identity, they pack it up, they move to a different place, and they start all over again. So this book was really good. I listened to everything I did this year. I basically listened to audio, but anyway, the audio narration was excellent. But it was really interesting. There was so many interesting stories within her life and how she strung them together. And I'm sure some of it was a little embellished, but she really painted a picture of these family members that she grew up with and her relationships with them. And it was heartbreaking, and it was suspenseful, and it was you see some loving moments, but it was just, I was on the edge of my seat when I was reading this. It was really, really good, really well done. I really enjoyed this book. I don't know, it was such an interesting memoir. I've never, you don't hear what somebody's account would have been like having had led that type of life. Just really interesting. And then in the end, she kind of brings everything together, and she finds a way to move on and sort of like released all this hurt that she's had in the past. So the ending was a little drawn out for me, but overall, loved the book. And my number 1 favorite nonfiction book of the year was Herbal Rituals, which you've heard me talk about many times, I'm sure, on my old channel. But this book, I actually have it right here. This was my favorite book of the year because it was a year-long reading project that I did. And it's basically a book that talks about different herbs and different rituals that you can do throughout the year. And it's broken down into each month. So each chapter talks about a different herb and the author's different rituals and experience and folklore around that particular herb or plant in that month. So it was really fun to go through and to read about. It was just very cozy. I guess that's the best way I can say it. It was such a cozy book. I feel like this book has helped put me more in the moment and in the present moment when I'm outside and I'm in nature. I found myself looking for all these plants. I've already started making different teas based on the herb, and I just really enjoyed this book a lot. This is my favorite one of the year. There you have it, my favorite books of the year. I hope you guys had a great reading year. Thank you so much for anybody that has found me in my channel or have come over from my other channel. I really appreciate it, you guys. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon.